Toy Story, Bluey, and even Frozen. All of these movies and shows have been copied by other studios that wanted to ride on their success. Ready to discover the rip-offs of these animations? Boxtory. China's Toy Story rip-off was released in 2013 and is called Boxtory, making it pretty clear that the people involved didn't care at all about any accusations of plagiarism. But the similarities aren't just in the name, since the movie's story is about food boxes that come to life, while Pixar's franchise is about toys that come to life. In China, the movie is also called Kunta 3D. Take a good look at the movie's title. Even the way the letters look is very similar to the Toy Story title. In fact, this is just one of many movies that use names similar to famous franchises to trick unsuspecting people, who end up watching them thinking they're about to see the original movie. Aside from the living boxes, the similar name, and the title's visual identity, Boxtory at least goes in a different direction from Toy Story as the movie goes on, becoming much more fantastical and crazy than Pixar's movies. However, it's still one of the 9 cheap movie ripoffs you need to know about. Are you ready? Because another amazing Cinewave is starting now. Chilla. Bluey became such a massive hit that it was only a matter of time before a copy of the show appeared, and that's how Chilla was born. Just look at a picture of Chilla and one of Bluey side by side. We don't even need to say anything else, right? It's so shameless that it looks like they just changed the character's species. The cartoon was made in the United States and follows Chip, a young blue chinchilla who spends time playing with his family and learning valuable lessons about life. Did you notice that this is basically the description of Bluey, except they replaced the little dog with a chinchilla? Even the main character's color is the same. Chip's family is also almost identical to the Healer family. He and his father share the same blue coloring, just like Bluey takes after Bandit, while Chip's sister takes after their mother, which is also very similar to Bingo and Chili. The biggest difference is that Chip has a younger brother, but with so many similarities, there had to be at least one thing that was different from Bluey in this cartoon. The ironic part is that animated shows from the United States are often copied by other countries, like China, but Chilla is an American cartoon copying Bluey, an Australian series. It just goes to show that a lack of creativity can be found in every corner of the world. Wulfu. Even Peppa Pig has to deal with copies, like Wulfu, a Vietnamese cartoon about a 5-year-old little wolf who goes on adventures with his family and animal friends. This case is even more controversial because S-Connect, the company that produces Wulfu, was sued over accusations that it plagiarized Peppa Pig. However, Entertainment One, which owns the rights to Peppa Pig, wasn't able to win the case. Even so, Wulfu is still considered a copy by many people. The animation style and even the sound effects are so similar to Peppa Pig that it's easy to see a scene from the cartoon and think it's a scene from the Little Pigs show, or even an official spin-off. One of the biggest differences is that Wulfu's humor can sometimes be grosser than Peppa Pig's, with a lot more fart jokes, for example. That was another reason why the cartoon received so much criticism, since Peppa Pig manages to entertain children and have silly humor without needing to go that far. Which of these copies surprised you the most? Comment #copy down below with your answer. We want to know what you think. Donkey X. Shrek loves making fun of Disney, but not even the Ogres movie managed to escape being copied. This time, the ripoff is called Donkey X. Wait, is that Donkey from Shrek? No, but they look so similar that it almost feels like a joke. There's no way that wasn't intentional. The movie doesn't have copies of Shrek or the other characters, but the fact that the donkey who appears here is basically a lighter colored version of Shrek's friend makes it pretty clear that the movie was trying to ride the hype of the DreamWorks franchise. To make things worse, this donkey is the main character, so it's almost like they were selling the project as a solo movie about Donkey from Shrek. Not to mention that the animation style is also very similar to Shrek's style, where the human characters look pretty strange. Of course, we're talking about the older movies, since Shrek 5 has much more modern animation. Donkey X retells the classic story of Don Quixote with a lot more humor, which feels very similar to the way the Ogres movies make fun of several Disney fairy tales. Just like with Wulfu, it's very easy to believe that this movie is an official spin-off of the franchise it's copying. The Little Panda Fighter. Another DreamWorks production that became a victim of copycats is Kung Fu Panda. When you go to watch that movie, be careful not to accidentally click on another film called The Little Panda Fighter, released in 2008 by Toyland Video, a Brazilian studio that made a lot of pretty questionable quality ripoffs. You only need to watch 3 seconds of a scene from The Little Panda Fighter to realize that this is basically a nightmare version of Kung Fu Panda, and honestly, we recommend watching only 3 seconds. Anyone who can sit through this entire movie is a true warrior. The movie follows a panda named Pancata who works as a janitor at a martial arts club, but but dreams of becoming a professional dancer. This movie is so strange that it became an international meme, just like several other Toyland video animations. Ratatoying. Let's talk about some other weird ripoffs made by this studio, like Ratatoying, the cheap copy of Pixar's Ratatouille. Both movies are about rats who cook, and come on, that's way too specific of a concept for two completely different movies to have. At least the two animations have a few differences. The first one is that Ratatouille is good, while Ratatoying looks like it was made by a baby using a computer. Wow, did we go too far? Either way, the animation is so bad that it becomes pretty obvious that this movie was made just so people would accidentally watch it, thinking they were about to see the real Ratatouille. In fact, Ratatoying was released in 2007, the same year Ratatouille came out. This copy must have been produced at the speed of light just so it could come out alongside Pixar's movie. And it's impossible to make something high quality that way, but it's not like Toyland Video cared. If you want to know what this movie is about, here it is. Ratatoying is a restaurant made for rats. The main character is the head chef of the restaurant, but the food is made using ingredients from humans, which means he and his friends have to break into kitchens every week to steal new ingredients. If you want to know more about the movie, look it up at your own risk, because the secondhand embarrassment anyone feels while watching this thing can be traumatizing. Subscribing is like getting a VIP ticket to watch all our animations firsthand. How about it? The Little Cars. Among the Disney animations copied by Toyland Video, there's also Cars. The worst version of the movie is called The Little Cars, and it keeps up Toyland Video's tradition of making copies with the worst animation possible. The Little Cars is an animated series with several episodes, running from 2006 to 2011, with an impressive 10 seasons. The series didn't just copy Cars, but also other popular productions from that time. For example, the third season is called The Fast and the Curious, clearly copying The Fast and the Furious. How did something this strange manage to last for more than a year? But maybe we should actually be thankful, because just like the Little Panda Fighter and Ratatoying, The Little Cars is such a bizarre copy that it ends up becoming funny, even though that clearly wasn't the original intention. And this is nowhere near Toyland Video's last creation. There's another famous movie that was shamelessly copied by the Brazilian studio, Little Bee. The next Toyland Video victim we're going to talk about is Bee Movie, made by DreamWorks, just like Kung Fu Panda. Its ripoff version is called Little Bee, and we'd go as far as saying that this time, the movie somehow managed to outdo itself in ugliness, even compared to Toyland Video's other productions. While Bee Movie shows a bee discovering the human world and becoming friends with a woman, Little Bee is about three things: a war inside the hive, a beekeeper who wants to fight, and a soldier who wants to produce honey. When you put it that way, the movie almost sounds epic, but the old video game style animation ruins everything. The movie came out in 2007, the same year Bee Movie was released. That's why this studio's movies are so poorly made. They're produced as quickly as possible and with extremely low budgets, so they can come out around the same time as the original movies. At least the story isn't identical. If the movie had a decent budget and hadn't been rushed just to ride on Bee Movie's popularity, it would still be a copy, but it might have been a copy that some people actually enjoyed watching. Now let's talk about the copy of one of Disney's most important animated movies, The Snow Queen. Frozen was a massive success, and it's pretty suspicious that around that same time, another animated movie about a queen with ice powers also came out. We're talking about The Snow Queen, a Russian production. But here's where things get funny. This movie came out in 2012, while Frozen didn't hit theaters until 2013. So does that mean Frozen copied The Snow Queen? It's not that simple. Frozen had already been in production for years, and it wasn't exactly a secret that the movie was expected to be a major success. So a Russian studio called Wizard Animation saw the perfect opportunity to make a very similar movie in less time, even if that meant sacrificing the quality of the animation, especially because they already knew exactly what to do. Since Frozen's story is based on the fairy tale The Snow Queen, so the Russian studio only needed to adapt that same story in its own way. Since the fairy tale is in the public domain, Disney could never sue Wizard Animation over it. Technically, they simply adapted the same story Disney did, even though they clearly did it to ride on the hype surrounding Frozen. The funny thing is that Frozen ended up changing a lot from the story it was based on, while The Snow Queen stayed much more faithful to the original tale. We'll say goodbye for now, but you can keep going with us by clicking one of the two videos on the screen. Thanks!